Well, we're here today with Dr. Michael Tewes. Dr. Tewes is the Frank Daniel Ituria Endowed Chair for Wildcat Studies at the Cesar Claiborne Wildlife Research Institute here at Texas A&M University Kingsville. That's a mouthful, Dr. Tewes.
5 times fast.
No, I can't.
Yeah, right. No, that comes from, I guess, 2008. Mr. Frank Ituria endowed the cat chair with $1 million gift to our university. Yeah, it was really special. And it just kind of reflected his 30 years of support for the cat research we've been doing, and his family has continued that support.
That's terrific. Okay, Dr. Tewes, so welcome. We're so glad you could be here.
Wow.
Let's just start by telling us about yourself. How did you get started here at the Cesar Claiborne Institute, and what do you do here at the Institute?
Okay, well, I got started, I guess, ever since I was a kid. In elementary school, I was into wildlife, bird watching, and then I grew up in a nearby small town, Odom, Texas. And I'd go out to the World Wildlife Refuge back in elementary and high school, volunteer there. Went on and continued my research in wildlife at Texas A&M University, and got my PhD at the University of Idaho. But it's been a lifelong passion. I've always been into wildlife throughout my life, and been really kind of benefiting from a lot of opportunities.
And how long have you been at the Institute?
I started at the Institute in 1981, October
Yeah.
1st, 1981, which was the first year the Institute began.
Oh, okay.
So this coming October will be my 40-year anniversary.
Wow.
Still have another 40 years to go.
Oh.
Well, maybe not quite so
We
long.
have a party?
I will
Yes.
have a 40th, Father. Yeah.
Yes, we're going to have a party. So you were always into wildlife. What got you into wildcats as a young person?
That was kind of being in the right place at the right time. I was just finishing my master's degree at the World Wildlife Refuge. And the assistant director at the time was Dr. Lynn Drury. He got a notice for a research project on ocelots and asked me to write the proposal.
Really?
Yeah, and our proposal didn't get it, but the one at Texas A&I at the time, before we became Texas A&M Kingsville, received it, and I was lucky enough for them to hire me to do that for as a research associate.
Wow.
Cool. So you have researched wildcats all over the world. What cat species did you first get to study abroad, and how did that opportunity come about?
Yeah, well, I guess I had 2 projects around 2000, about 20 years ago in Thailand, and we studied clouded leopards, golden cats, 36 leopard cats, and we caught 1 marbled cat. And most people haven't heard of a marbled cat, but it's a very small version of a clouded leopard, very small
Really?
cat. Yeah, beautiful cat. And clouded. Our research on clouded leopards, marbled cat, and the golden cat was the first significant telemetry work that had been done on the species. So it was kind of first.
That's cool.
Yeah, we'd done that was overseas. We'd done a fair amount of research in Mexico, 10 years early on ocelots and jaguarundis, but that was beginning of some overseas work.
So you mentioned a handful of cats that you've studied. What are some other species you've worked with, cats or otherwise?
Yeah, it's really my team. I sit behind a computer and answer the phone all the time. It's my cat team that gets to have a lot of the fun.
That's true.
We've also I had one student that studied civet cats, 4 species of civet cats in Taiwan. Had another student study African lions and leopards in Tanzania, and then that's mostly it. We haven't done that much international research, but enough to make it interesting.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Can we go travel somewhere?
I would love to.
Yeah, as soon as the virus gets past, let's go.
Right. We got to get over this. Well, that's pretty neat. I think I've told you I kept cats at the Ellen Trout Zoo in Lufkin, and the clouded leopards were my favorite. They're just such a neat animal.
But they had ocelots there too, right?
No,
they
we didn't
not.
have
Okay.
ocelots.
Okay.
I had lions, tigers, jaguars, bobcats, and clouded leopards. 3 of each
Oh, yeah.
when I was there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but the clouded leopards were definitely my favorite. So, of all this work you've done, What do you think has been your greatest contribution to science in the study of wildcats, or top 2 or 3 if you have some?
Yeah, that's a good question. Greatest contribution, probably, I would kind of respond in 2 ways. One is a cat way, is just to be able to find out for the first time something that no one had known before is always really exciting for me, and I think most scientists. But we've done that for so many species. We found out ecological patterns, movement patterns, activities, food habits, a whole collection of ecological activities for the first time of many of these cat species. And when we did it for ocelots in 1982, that was the first study that had been done on that species. We began March of '82, and then there was a second study a little bit later that year in Venezuela, I believe. No, it was in Belize, I believe. But so yeah, just finding a lot of important information that helps with understanding the cat, and then how it's applied to benefit their management and recovery is really important. And we've done that for a number of cat species. The other, I guess, part of that would be another, I consider highlight, is producing the students that we do. I think most professors that have been at it for a few years realize that the contribution that they have is an enduring legacy through their students. And to see them go on to do really neat things is just one of the best feelings, I think, for me, and I think a lot of other professors.
Yeah. So let's go back to the cats just for a second. Can you just give us a couple of tidbits off the top of your head? A couple of things that you and your team discovered that nobody knew before.
Well, I'll just start with one cat that we've spent a lot of time on, the ocelot. When I started in 1981, I had professors telling me that they weren't even sure if they existed in the state
Really?
anymore. Yeah. So yeah, just to verify that they do occur here, and then finally get information about their population, where they occur, and what kind of population size, and a whole host of information was really valuable. So to find out where the populations occurred in places that ranchers didn't even know they had them.
Really?
Yeah, they're such a special cat. The nocturnal movement mostly at night. They're secretive in the behavior, and then they occupy the densest brush you could think of. All 3 different factors contribute to hiding these cats.
Yeah.
And so they could occur in locations where people even didn't realize they were. But there weren't many of them. Another important finding that we found is we found out there are less than 100 ocelots in Texas, which represents the entire U.S. population. So there are fewer than 100 individuals of this kind of cat in the United States, and that was pretty special.
I mean, the word special is it. It really highlights how special these few that we have are.
Yeah.
Wow.
When you say 100, I know it's hard for people to potentially picture, like, how do you know it's less than 100 cats? How would you go about counting them, per se?
Yeah, good question. The first 5 or 10 years, we kind of always assumed there would be more in some places where they used to be, and eventually we surveyed a variety of places and found out that they just don't occur there. And in the locations where they are, we've been able to estimate the populations through box trapping, radio telemetry, and cameras, use of cameras to identify individual cats, and then from that we pull information together to estimate population size.
Gotcha. Thanks. So is the ocelot the most rare cat species you've ever studied?
Well, that's no, not really. It's rarest in the United States, but the marbled cat has to rank up there pretty high. Clouded leopards have to rank pretty high. So those 2 cats are right up there. But really, there are a lot more ocelots throughout the rest of the range.
Okay, just not as much in Texas.
Yes, very rare in Texas.
So speaking of the other 2 species that are pretty rare, how do you find these guys in the wild if they're not as abundant as other species?
Yeah, a good sampling technique are cars, If there's something that exists somewhere, they're going to be ran over.
Oh
no.
Unfortunately. But seriously, that is actually a good indicator for population occurs in certain areas. There'll be roadkills, and then reports will come from that. And I kind of use that as the same sampling technique. If there was a Bigfoot in the United States, they would be occasionally found dead on the road.
I've
So-
been searching.
That's
Yeah.
a good point.
So,
Been researching lots about it. So
yeah, in fact, the last time I mentioned Bigfoots on a media thing, I got some pretty mean communications from other states. So there's definitely a strong support group out there for
Yeah.
Bigfoots.
I've been out to their range, I guess, in California, and there's just Bigfoot stuff everywhere. So
Yeah.
you don't want to diss Bigfoot.
Yeah, I think they would get hit on the road. If
I was
that's
gonna say, until we find one dead on the road, we can't be sure.
right.
Wow. So besides Bigfoot, what's been your favorite cat to study over the years?
By far the Ocelot.
Mhm.
I guess because I've spent 40 years focused on that cat and spent a lot of projects, and I have a lot of students that have focused on that species, a variety of topics, but clearly the Ocelot. Bobcats come in a close second though, because they're such a common cat, and you can understand a lot of ecological patterns through this common cat that occurs everywhere in Texas, essentially, including my front porch.
Yeah. They show up on the Ring doorbell sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've had them on my Ring doorbell with the front
Really?
porch. Yeah.
Maybe Andrew, that's what you saw in your picture.
There
he
you
has
go.
this mystery blob in his
He has
backyard.
an alien in his house.
So maybe it's a bobcat.
So, what's your favorite part of your job? What day, when you get up in the morning, you're like, yes, I get to do X today. What is that?
When I get to go out into the field and to visit a field site that's pretty much unstructured for the day, I know I want to achieve a couple of objectives, but to know I don't have a time deadline to achieve something, and to go out and enjoy the beautiful diversity of shrub species
Yeah.
and brush that occurs out there. Ocelots use, I guess, one study by David Schindel, who's now head of the Florida Panther Program, which is another endangered cat. He found 45 different species of brush in ocelot habitat. So
Wow.
that's really a beautiful diversity of all these different shrubby species.
It really is. I think one of the coolest things about what we do, I learn something every single time I go to the field. You just feel like, wow, I hadn't noticed that before, and today I noticed it.
I even my backyard. I
Yes.
did that yesterday.
Exactly.
As you do it for a few years, you start to pick up on very small
Subtle.
observations that a lot of people would just ignore it. And I was listening to a yellow-billed cuckoo yesterday. It had a kind of call that was different from mature yellow-billed, so I thought it was a young one that had just been born. Indeed it was. I finally honed in on it and realized its pattern of call was different than adults. And it was a young yellow-billed, I think, calling for its mother, saying, "Have you totally left me now?"
Yeah,
And you could tell it's looking around, wanting to either be fed or say,
yeah.
"Am I on my own? Is it time to be on my own?"
Mom.
And it's just those kind of very small things is really, here in the latter parts of my career, is really gets me excited.
Yeah. That's neat. So, for young listeners who might be really excited to hear, oh gosh, I could have a career studying cats, what would you suggest that they do? What do they need to do to get started in a career similar to yours?
I get that question a lot.
Yeah, I bet you do.
And I get it from around the world, by the way, but especially for young ones, I get that a lot. And I just have 2 or 3 general pieces of advice. First, make sure it's what you want to do. Realize it's going to be very competitive. So I think the number one thing would be persistence. Don't give up.
Uh-huh.
Don't give up. Don't give up. Keep trying to get into the field you want to get into. Along that line, you've got to work hard and you've got to study hard. You've got to make really good grades, the best grades you can make. And then try to put yourself in a position to where things can happen. Try to find a mentor that's close to that field or someone that will help kind of train you and advance you and to help you develop your life skills and your career skills, and then be ready for when the opportunity occurs. But I'd say persistence is one of the biggest things.
Yeah, I can imagine. The first thing you said, try to make sure this is what you want to do. How would somebody go about making sure that do they need to volunteer? How do you find out this is really what I want to do?
And there are probably different ways to approach that and different ways to get there, but volunteerism definitely is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I volunteered in high school to the World Wildlife Refuge. I remember going out every day to work in their aid collection, and got to see the original director, Dr. Clarence Cottom, meet him in 1973. I remember that well. And so that kind of made people aware and realize that I am interested and serious about that. But volunteering is definitely one of them. One of the things. Working as an intern is another important pathway to get there. And then just finding other people that are studying something nearby and that you can just participate with.
Okay. Sounds like good advice.
Yeah.
I'll throw in one last one I've kind of
Yeah.
had in recent years. Besides working hard, studying hard, and being passionate about it, don't be a jerk.
That's really good advice too. We need some. Everybody needs to. Yeah, I know.
We can all have bad days, you know, and I call it a jerk factor. Everyone is from 1 to 10. Any one day, we can just don't be consistently at a high
Don't be consistently
8 or 9.
a jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You may have bad days, but because people don't want to work with jerks.
That's really good advice. I like that.
We'll lighten it up. Speaking
Yes.
of jerks, just kidding. We're asking all of our guests this question. Working outdoors, like we tend to do, things don't always go as planned, as you're probably very aware. So we're asking all of our guests to share an entertaining biology blunder with our listeners. Do you have a funny or entertaining blunder you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, I do. One of them is, I actually probably have a number of them, but one that I remember most occurred on December 7th, 1994, which is Pearl Harbor Day, December
Yes.
7th, but we were attacked by bees instead of warplanes.
Oh no.
And one of my students, Lewis Harbison, was a PhD student of mine, who's now works at South Washington University, a very successful program in wildlife out there. But he knew where a mother mountain lion was north of Freer. Was probably some kittens, so we invited a newspaper reporter and photographer from Corpus Christi to come document this litter size. We walked into it, kind of pushed the mother a little ways off, and found the first kitten, started working it up. Then Lewis and I went to the second kitten, was climbing up in a tree, and we finally got to that, got that kitten in hand, and at that moment the bees exploded. And so there were just and the thing you don't do Africanized bees, you don't ever swat one.
Right.
They release its pheromones and then they just go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, different people were swatting different bees and they were just going super crazy. But I remember I finally removed the 2 kittens off in distance. I said the phrase, abandoned ship, let the kittens go, and let them crawl into the grass, and they turned out to be okay. But the bees kept attacking us. And at that moment, Lewis Harbison remembered that the dog was tied to the tree where the bees were.
Oh no.
And he ran back to get the dog. It was covered in bees. He just swiped them off, and then he became covered in bees. And then the two, Lewis and the dog went to a pool of water, collapsed in the water. He stuck his head underneath. The bees just attacked. You know, they go into your nostril, your ears, behind glasses. They just incapacitate you in just a few seconds. It does have a happy ending. Don't.
Okay.
I was gonna say this is one of my things that I'm
This is a
most
nightmare.
afraid of.
No,
It's not funny yet.
No, it will have a happy ending. But it was kind of funny, and then we happened to have a photographer that they're documenting it all. Even though they were getting stung, I remember him swatting bees too.
So he was a trooper, kept taking photos.
He did, yeah. And it went national. It went on the EP. And I was just looking this morning in anticipation of this talk. If you Google Lewis harvesting bees,
Okay.
it'll come with this old
Andrew's on
newspaper report, a photograph of Lewis and I being, well, Lewis got stung. I never got stung. But I found out if you keep your cap on, your coat on, and gloves on, it's harder for him to sting. And everybody
Yeah.
knew that. But so I took the dog to the vet. It was treated and survived, and Lewis and a couple others went to the emergency room in Poteet or near there, and they survived. So it all ended up. It was an interesting story to tell, but and no one got hurt, but no one died. That was the key.
That's good.
Yeah. But
No one
also
died.
give an example. I use that to all my students. We have a lot of safety talks, and one of them is bees are one of the worst things you have to worry about in the field.
Yeah.
Rattlesnakes, so, but bees are it can just happen in 5 seconds. Things can
Right.
go bad.
Right. Yeah, rattlesnakes really don't scare me too much, but gosh, yeah, bees just coming out of nowhere at you and attacking, that's a thing nightmares are
We've
made of.
had multiple in my field where we've heard the
Really?
bzzz, and all of us have just gone,
Yeah.
like hit the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's the advice to do with that: run.
Yeah.
Run.
Don't stand 3 to 5 seconds and look around. Start running
Yeah.
at a zigzag away,
Yeah.
and then they'll follow the thermal trove. But if you can run long enough,
Yeah.
you can probably do okay.
We lucked out that I think both cases they were just like traveling somewhere.
It was a swarm that was
They
traveling.
were
I've seen
just
that
like
too.
moving, and we just all whoop, like just quickly just hunker down and just don't move.
Yeah, I've seen those too, but and they generally don't attack
Yeah.
the movements.
They're
The
just
swarms, yeah.
relocating.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is a little,
New home.
it is a little
Unnerving.
scary. Okay, you said you had several, so I want to hear
Yeah,
one that's
Not terrifying.
Yes, that's
one
not
that I won't be
terrifying.
having nightmares about.
Well, I have another terrifying one. That's big. My student in Taiwan
Oh
was
no.
attacked. I think it was the Asiatic killer wasp, or a gigantic wasp, something like that.
What?
And wasn't a pleasant. She was studying leopard cats. That wasn't pleasant either. And she survived. And I'll leave it at that.
Wow.
'Cause the details aren't that funny either.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I was afraid you were going to say somebody was attacked by a tiger or something. Has anybody ever had a
outside
sticky
again.
situation with a cat?
Sure. Yeah, Yanya Netchka, who hopefully will listen to this at some point.
Yeah.
And I'll remind him of.
Jan Yanetska.
Yeah, he's a professor now at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Him and Dr. Lon Grassman, Corpus Christi, wanted to predator call tigers in this park, and we had nothing but jungle around us.
Uh-huh.
And I stayed back, and I advised them not to do it. But they went off into the jungle, and one of our predator callings was on the road, and we could hear a lot of noise just in the brush. That park was full of tigers.
Really?
You could drive around and smell tiger urine in
Mhm.
different places, and so that's not that is not too. And that one of those two he was attacked by a leopard. I've got a long list of actually trials of a cat biologist.
Yeah.
That someday, if I
Yeah.
decide to write a book on it.
Yeah, you
but,
need to write a
Good
book.
book.
yeah, that was
Yes.
Lon Grassman got attacked by a leopard.
A lot of near-death experiences in your lab.
Near
So-
death. They didn't occur.
Near death.
Yeah, right.
So recruitment,
Emphasis on
listen
near.
to this. You really
So,
want to work with cats?
Yes. you
Well,
would-
my goal is to retire with no students dying.
That's a
I'm getting
good
close.
goal.
So you have 40
That's a
more
good
years
goal.
of.
Yeah. Right.
That's a good goal. I like that. So, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, just a little bit about cats. One thing
Yeah.
that's so exciting for me of cats is that there are 40 different species of cats around the world.
Uh-huh.
You've probably heard of the big ones, the eight big ones: lions, tigers, leopards, jaguars, mountain lions. But most people haven't heard of the 33 species of small cats. And we've been lucky. We've studied 10 to the 12 species of cats, and there are just so many more that still are relatively unstudied. But if you're into wild cats and you want to learn more about them, I think there's a really excellent book by Luke Hunter titled "Wild Cats of the World," I believe.
I have that book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
It's a great
It's
book.
a great book. Yeah. And he did a very good job of that. And I just take that book with me wherever I travel. When I get bored someplace,
Yeah.
I stop and start reading that book. And I think most people would really enjoy it if they're interested about cats.
I think so too. I think it's a great book. It's very fun to read.
Yeah.
And you can just flip through and, oh, I want to read about this one. It's not like you have to start at the beginning and go all the way and, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm one of these. I'm passionate about what I do. I want to do work as long as I can,
Yeah.
as long as I can stay mentally alert and healthy. And I'm already probably approaching that edge, the mental alertness. But yeah, no, I'm trying to get a couple of projects going. Maybe one in Botswana on leopards, and then I'd like this small cat project in Israel. We're trying
Wow.
to get those two projects going this winter.
What kind of cats do they have in Israel?
The ones that we would study would be caracals
Okay.
and jungle cats
I don't know what jungle cat.
and African wildcat. Those two, the
Okay.
last two are small species of cat,
Mhm.
and they occur in northern Israel. And we're working with some colleagues over there to try to get that established.
Up in like the Golden Heights?
Yeah,
up in that
yes,
area?
exactly.
Mhm.
It's just
Okay.
Galilee, Sea of Galilee. It's just like within 15, 25
Yeah.
miles north of
Okay,
there.
if you need any fieldwork help,
Yes.
I love that area.
It is.
So-
It's a beautiful
It's
area. From
really
what I've read,
beautiful.
I haven't been there.
You haven't?
No.
You know, it's really beautiful, and I took some photos in Israel. I was there about 3 years ago, I guess, and Rebecca took a trip to Israel once too. But I took some photos in Israel that I brought back. Specifically took a photo because it looks like South Texas. You know, there's prickly pear in it, and grasses, and it's a little bit rocky, a little bit sandy, and it's just like, man, if I didn't know better, I might think that I was in South Texas just by looking around. There's a lot more relief to the terrain, of course. It's not as flat.
Yeah.
But yeah, but
Interesting.
really, and really pretty rangelands as you drive up through the Golden Heights. You have to stay on the roads though because there's lots of unexploded, things you can't get.
Unexploded
You
minefields.
can't walk around.
Our local
Yeah.
people know where those are, though. They've already been describing them.
Yeah,
And you hope
that's
that
good.
some other big animals over there have already set off most of the mines.
Yeah, I guess they don't mind letting the cows out there if
Right.
a cow explodes every once in a while. You know, now we've got a barbecue, but
Right.
but you're not supposed to walk out there.
Oh,
Yeah, but
Crispy,
a little crispy might be.
But one of the jungle cat, which is kind of a misnomer, they occur in some of the agriculture areas in the Hula Valley just north of there,
Okay,
and I think would be a pretty easy cat to study.
you think so?
Yeah, small, pretty high densities in a couple of
Mhm.
spots,
Mhm.
and there's some people already working on that species of cat over there.
Yeah.
The caracal will be much more challenging, which is another thing I've really kind of gotten to like is things that are challenging for cats.
Yeah.
So we'll see if we can make that happen.
Yeah. Is the Wildcat? The Wildcat is the one that looks just like a domesticated. I mean, like if you saw a picture of it, you'd think that somebody was a pet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that-
and,
okay.
Yeah, and there's called the African wildcat. They have a couple of another species too, and that's where they were domesticated.
I was going to
They were
say, is that where
domesticated
house
in the
cats
Middle East.
came from? Okay.
Yeah, the earliest was on Cyprus,
Okay.
which is just offshore there. And then later they were very common with Egyptians.
I was going to say, I knew that the Egyptians had them.
Worshipped
and-
them and-
Yes,
yeah.
worshipped them and were
Yeah.
very. And that's probably where they've gotten their catitude.
Exactly,
Right?
that's right. They haven't let humans forget yet that
No.
they were worshipped.
They've been worshipped.
Yeah, and I was in Switzerland, I guess, about 2 years ago. And I went out visited some cat biologists over there, and they were studying the wildcat there in
Really?
Switzerland. And they were in these farm fields and some pretty domesticated agricultural areas, and indeed they have problems even there trying to separate
Do they really?
feral cats and you almost have to do genetic sometimes
Okay.
from the wild African wildcat
Right.
to domestic cat.
Wow. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about?
No. That's about
Okay.
it. Just I'm having a blast doing what
Yeah.
I'm doing here,
That's true.
and I feel very fortunate having grown up 40 miles away and being able to spend my time here.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Homegrown, right up the road in Odom.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty special. Well, thanks so much for spending time with
My
us.
pleasure.
I really
Thank you.
appreciate you.
Sure.
This was
Thanks.
fun.